And they really racked up a ton of points, but mostly against the Jets. I mean, they beat the Jets 43-23 a few weeks ago. Then they beat them again 38-3, so just pounding the heck out of the poor Jets. But then, against other teams, they lost in between those two. They only scored 9 and lost to the Dolphins. They only scored 13 and lost to the Chiefs. They only scored 17 and in beating the Vikings. So they really haven't put up a whole lot of good offensive numbers against teams that aren't the New York Jets. So I think that the Browns have a chance to really, if they can, contain Watkins and Woods, and also stop, Anthony Dixon running the ball, I think that the Browns could put together a really strong defensive performance this weekend that could help us win.
Right, and you talk about that running game. Obviously, they've had all kinds of issues there, being the Bills as well. Fred Jackson may be back, but he's not really contributing a whole lot at this point. You brought up Dixon, and they've got Brown as well there. But those are places where I think that the Browns need to, of course, the Browns with their issues injury-wise. Speaking of updates on that, it looks like they may be close to a full complement of guys. Obviously, Taylor's going to still be out, but it's quite possible that Dansby as well as Sheard will be there. Sheard, of course, got back for a few plays last week, but Dansby, it's coming right down to it as well, which will bolster that. And I agree with Sean. They're down to their literally fourth and fifth backs there, and that hurts. You say what you want about, we say it here, with next man up. You have to say next man up because somebody's got to play, but there's a difference between the fourth and fifth guys on the depth chart and the first and the second and the third. So those are places I'm with you. Defensively, I think the Browns are in a good position heading into this game as long as they don't let, Kyle Orton go out there and do things that he shouldn't be doing against them. It's the other side of the ball that the Bills bring some things that the Browns absolutely have to be not only worried about, but game planning for, and it all starts with that front four of the Bills.
That's right. They've got an outstanding defensive line. Mario Williams just ate up the Dolphins with 3.5 sacks a couple weeks ago. He's got 12. Then you got Marcel Darius, who's got 10, and Jerry Hughes has 9.5. So
think
they
about
really
that. You
have
just listed
some monsters.
Look at the sacks. How many sacks did you just list between those three guys alone? More than half of the teams in the NFL have.
That's 31.5 sacks in just those three guys that I listed. They're some monsters.
That's sick, man. And that front four, and they're deep there. They're able to, again, Mike Pettin helped be a part of putting the touches on that defense there last year. And he talked about even the differences that they brought. He thought that there wasn't a lot of change per se as much as they just tweaked it. They made it a bit more aggressive, but it was the same players playing differently as we saw. They were able to get rebuild. I don't want to say rebuild, but get Mario Williams rolling again a bit there. And they did what they did with the rookie in Alonzo, who's going to be out here. But man, that front, visions of Houston in my head all over again. If I'm looking for what can go wrong in this game for the Browns, I'm seeing J.J. Watt in the body of Mario Williams and these guys up front, because they're going to come with that same game plan. They're going to attack. The Browns' offensive line is going to have to be on its game here, man, to protect Brian Hoyer. And then, but I think too, with the Browns' rushing attack, that's one of the ways that you counter an aggressive defense is with those draws and with some runs up the middle, and you use their aggressiveness against them. So I'm hoping that Kyle Shanahan's play calling will take that into effect. And this is where you hope that Mike Pettin coaching that defense last year, you don't need him to know everything. All you hope is that he knows one or two gives, one or two tells on this defense where he can go, hey, when you let Darius too deep into the backfield, this gap opens up. Or he gets over-aggressive here and we can take advantage of it. That's where I hope his knowledge of this comes in. Not the X's and O's, but just individual player tendencies, because all you need to do is take advantage of those once or twice to win this game.
That's right. That would be very nice. And I think the fact that we have Josh Gordon is opening up some of those passing lanes for the Browns. But I think that what the Browns really have to do in order to neutralize that defensive line is to run the ball effectively. I mean, it really worked well last week against the Falcons, the way Isaiah Crowell and Terrence West were able to run the ball. They've got to do that and, keep the Browns in, third and short type situations where they can throw some short passes and just neutralize those instances where you don't have Hoyer dropping back and the Wolves are coming at him over and over and over. I mean, of course, you're going to want to take your shots down the field, but if you can keep them off balance by continuing to pound the ball on the ground, then that, reduces the opportunities for those monsters to come in and then sack Hoyer. So I think really the key to this entire game is going to be the Browns' ability to run the football.
Oh, I agree with you 150%. Isaiah Crowell on the season averaging 5 yards a carry. Him and West are going to continue to be that 1-2 combination, and I think that's part of your counters there that you're going to need to as well to counter that defense. And then, as you said, going to have to go through the air. Gordon, we saw last week, he's going to make a difference, and he is going to help out defensively. And the coaches couldn't mention that enough this week, by the way, while everybody focuses on 8 catches for 120 yards. And you and I talked about this the last few weeks. I wasn't worried about just production-wise what Josh Gordon does. I just thought just him being on the field steps guys back a couple of feet off of the line. You can say, no, well, he's been out for 10 weeks. I'm telling you, if a defensive coordinator didn't back off of Josh Gordon a bit and let himself get beat, then he would probably be wondering about his job status later on in the season. That's what you do. Hello. And so anyways, that does add that. And we saw last week, I was talking to somebody yesterday. I said, just that screen pass the other day, forget going deep for passes. When you can get thin through no space at all, and you can hippie hop on some cracks and roll your way through 19 more yards on something like that, that's physical gifts that can't be done. But that threat is going to spread things out, although the Browns went out of their way this week to stress that they thought that they went too hard after Josh Gordon last week, and they want to make sure that they continue to keep it within the offense. I say baloney. Don't listen to that, because they're going to continue to try to get the ball to him. But they are right in the effect that you do want to get it when it comes open there. Definitely saw some forcing of the ball. I expect to see the Browns back off of that a little bit here while still utilizing him. But we mentioned it. It was the threat of him being out there that, and again, the coaches mentioned this all week. They said there's invisible things that come that the average person doesn't see when Gordon gets back on the field. And that's what we're talking about. The extra couple of feet, the extra couple of yards that guys have to respect, which is going to magically make the running game look a little bit better, make the offensive line look a little bit better. And that's good. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but that absolutely played a part in the success last week of getting the running game going, because they had to, well, besides the fact that it was Atlanta's defense, but I think that will play in as well. And I agree, Vashon. I do think all season long, Vashon in the chat room with a comment that the Browns have not gotten the backs involved and they need to get them more involved in the pass game. I actually am quite surprised at that same thing myself, Jeff, because for all the talk that Hoyer likes to take the quick pass and the easy, well, I mean, he really rarely do, and maybe it's not where the plays lead, and maybe this is not what the Browns want out of their offense. I don't know whether it's the offense, whether it's the backs, whether it's the quarterback, but they don't utilize the backs too much out of the backfield. And to me, just even if playing Madden, that's always your safety net is look for that dump off guy and pick up a first down there. And I'm surprised that they don't utilize him more too. Do you think it's the offense, or do you think it's the quarterback, or do you think it's having rookies in the backfield? Because they didn't really go for Tate much either, but he did have a few receptions.
I think it's mostly the design of the offense. I think that what they like to do is they like to get all the receivers involved. They like to get the tight ends involved more. Although, it would really open things up a little more and give the defense something more to think about if you throw the ball to the running backs. Of course, we've seen that work out many, many times, but it just doesn't seem like that's really in the cards in the in the game plan of this offense. It seems like they would rather throw to their tight ends or maybe their second tight end rather than dump it all off out of the backfield. Because you look at the stats, West has only caught 8 passes. Tate, when he was here, caught 9, and Crowell caught 5. So it's really not a big priority. Maybe like you said, since they're rookies, maybe in the next couple years or so, they could start to sort of fold that into the offense, because that would make them even more dangerous. But probably because the rookies, they're probably not trying to throw them too much into that right now.
You're listening to the Sports Fix. Jeff Gorman from Browns101.com with J-Rock here, talking about the Browns and the Bills and the scouting report. And as you looked around at the Bills, what else sticks out to you here that the Browns really need to be all focused on and all eyes on here to make sure that they come out with a victory? Because as we said, this one here, this one is going to set the loser back a bit, especially if it's Buffalo. If Buffalo does not win this game, then they're going to catch themselves really on the outside looking in and needing other things to happen down the last month of the season to continue their hopes for the playoffs. And the Browns, you can say what you want about playing the schedule game and looking at wins. To me, that game is out the window. Every game in the division, or every team in the division, is sitting at 7 wins, man. Every team, every week, it's going to be who won and who lost, and they're going to walk their way to a division title. And so this is interesting to me, because it's one thing to be. This is what I like about this. Let's talk about this for a minute. It's not just being in playoff position. That a lot of teams are still in playoff position. It's the way the division is, this division in particularly is, because it's going to be a week to week, one team climbing over the other the next week. It's going to be fun to watch. As long as it goes your team's way, it'll be a little more fun to watch, but it'll be nerve-wracking for some people. But man, watching this North come down to the last month is going to be some fun football to watch. And literally, for the Browns, Bengals, Ravens, and Steelers, as crazy as it sounds, every game for the last 5 weeks is a must-win. It really is, because every week one of those teams wins. If you lose, you drop behind. There's only 5 left, and there's really probably only going to be one team out of this division that's going to get into the playoffs.
I know. It's been really an amazing battle. I can't remember a year in which all 4 teams, had been in contention. The Browns get a big win, and then you look, darn, the Steelers won too. The Ravens won too. Somebody help us out. But I think the biggest thing that the Browns need to do is they need to not turn the ball over talking about Brian Hoyer, throwing 3 interceptions last week. He was he's very down on himself, even though the Browns won. He's like, I really have to play better. I think that he's going to. I think he's, very self-motivated, and I think that, he's not going to just say, well, we got through that one, okay. He's going to personally be trying to take better care of the ball, and it's not going to be easy because, the Bills have some very good underrated cornerbacks in Corey Graham and Leotis McKelvin, so they can make you pay if you throw it off, throw it wrong a little bit there. So I think that Hoyer's accuracy and just keeping the ball from being turned over, I think that's going to be very important. It's funny because, I watched it on NFL Live or something on ESPN, I think it was, on the ESPN website, and both of the analysts were like, the Bills are going to win because, they're going to be back in Buffalo and all the fans, and, the fans are going to be cheering for them. But they both pretty much said the Bills will win because the fans will be cheering for them. And, I kind of think it's going to be the opposite. I think that last week was the big emotional win for the Bills after the week they went through with the bad weather, and, they get to Detroit, they got some Bills fans there cheering for them, like, hey, we got the crowd on our side, and they're really pumped up. But I think this week might actually be kind of an emotional letdown for the Bills. I think the fans will be into it, but I don't think that the Bills can sustain that kind of emotion that they had last week. So I think there's going to be a bit of a letdown. I think that's actually going to work against them on Sunday.
You know what? I really could be with you there on that, too, because I felt that way with last week, too, the way they blew up on the Jets. And it's the Jets. The Jets are just absolutely imploding upon themselves at this point. No, they are. They're just finding ways for each week to be even more comical than the week before. Absolutely. So I think exactly what you were just saying as well. And I see you, Vajon. Hey, look. Guys cannot like Brian Hoyer. They can like Brian Hoyer all they want. I'm looking at my quotes here from throughout this week, and one of them that I had circled that I wanted to mention on the show. And when you use the term intangible, then what I'm about to say can just describe that term right there. I don't care what you say about his size, his arm, his hustle, his ability, his accuracy, whatever you want. When your other players look at the media and say, there's never a time during a game that we're out of it because we have number 6 running the show. When your wide receivers and your other players say that, you cannot believe in Brian Hoyer. I don't have to believe in Brian Hoyer, but man, those cats do. For whatever reason, you want to take it, well, they must all be crazy if Hoyer stinks because somehow a whole locker room full of people are with the guy, and somehow he's fooled all of them, but he hasn't fooled the smart people out there who know that he's not a good quarterback. It's amazing how he can fool a whole bunch of professional athletes, but and he can fool them into winning games they should be losing, and he can fool them into